Luxury condos, luxury townhomes, luxury apartments, luxury this, luxury that. It is everywhere. And as a college student looking for their first off-campus apartment, or later a young first-time homebuyer, I was supremely frustrated with the unattainable luxury developments popping up all over downtown Raleigh. Of course, I knew that developers are in the game to make money, but I was still so frustrated at such blatant cash grabs in all of the very best places to live in the city. I couldn't help but get a little bit irritated every time I'd see an ad for yet another apartment complex featuring first-class amenities and premium finishes. I couldn't, and still can't, afford any of those, and I make a decent salary. Did they just forget about all the regular folks? Where's all the new affordable housing? Isn't this the kind of thing that doomed Los Angeles and San Francisco? I also sympathized with homeowners concerned about the character and history of their neighborhoods. Why would we ruin that just to build housing for the wealthy? My staunch progressive political leanings reinforce those beliefs even further. Of course, greedy capitalists will ruin historical neighborhoods and overrun downtown with ultra-expensive condos. Their benefit just has to be to the detriment of everyday people, right? These beliefs just seemed incredibly natural to me until they didn't. I came to learn that there was a lot more to the affordable housing issue than I believed, and maybe a lot of the outrage at new urban developments were misplaced. In fact, oftentimes, they are necessary for the inevitable growth of the city. I still believe that new affordable housing is of paramount importance. However, new residential developments in our urban centers are an indispensable piece of the puzzle. Yes, despite the ridiculous price tags, despite the luxury buzzwords and repetitive, boxy architecture, they have their place with proper rules and regulations from the city. If you're skeptical, I understand, but hear me out for a minute. Let's dive in. The first point I'd like to make is that there is a serious housing supply problem in many cities across the country. Yes, there are serious housing shortages in many of our fastest growing urban areas, such as my home city of Raleigh. Despite sensationalized news outlets that project major cities as undesirable shitholes, despite misleading stories about millions of homes sitting vacant, the country and world is rapidly urbanizing, and many American cities do not have the housing supply to support this trend. High demand and low supply naturally will result in insane, unaffordable prices in rent and real estate across the board, which is exactly what we've been seeing. Now, this shouldn't really be a point of debate. Some quick research will tell you that yes, there is a housing shortage issue in many parts of the country, and basic economics indicates that must be a cause of skyrocketing prices. Our downtown centers are really some of the only walkable places where you don't need a car just to exist, and unsurprisingly, for a lot of people, that makes it a popular destination. These are just baseline facts which should lead to an uncontroversial conclusion. We need more housing in our cities. We need more new housing, and we need to repurpose existing, irresponsible land usage to accommodate more people. With that said, let's go back to the idea of these luxury apartments and condos. Often, I've found that the luxury buzzword is just that, a buzzword. These places will have a similar fit and finish and price as those who leave it out. It's just a trendy marketing tactic for new building that also plays along with the nutty housing market. But the introduction of new housing en masse will ease pressure on the market and drive prices down as a whole, or at least help stabilize them, which also affects the more affordable existing housing market. Something I'd like to get out of the way, though, is that no, I don't trust real estate developers. Not at all. They're in the game to make as much money as possible, and left alone, that would naturally come as a detriment to the common good of a city. However, as a part of rezoning cases, development ordinances, and building permits, local governments can carefully guide developers into building places that can be used and enjoyed by anybody. This might take the form of new bicycle facilities, improved sidewalks, new public plazas, or even a set number of affordable units. A lot of the new retail spaces built on the ground floors of residential towers might be geared towards the wealthy residents that live in them, but that isn't always the case. I can remember a time when Raleigh didn't have a single grocery store in the downtown center, but now we have two that can be accessed by anyone in the area. Developers won't naturally do what's best for the city, no, but That's why it's so important to have a responsible local government that can force them into building better places, places that, one way or another, benefit everybody. If a universal truth is that we need to build more housing for more people, then one would think building new housing in places where there wasn't any before shouldn't really be controversial. However, time and time again we see outsized protests for new housing developments that will replace things like fast food joints or even convenience stores. Right here in Raleigh, it was recently announced that a CHAR-GRILL in a prime downtown location will be closing, as the owners decided to sell it to a developer for a new mixed-use project who already bought up a vacant gas station next door. Reading through social media like Raleigh's subreddit, I was genuinely surprised at the amount of pushback on this. To a degree, I understand. The CHAR-GRILL on Hillsborough Street has been there forever, makes delicious hamburgers, and occupies a unique mid-century building that will have to be torn down. But that use of land in that location at this point is downright irresponsible. It is absolutely a car-oriented establishment that is a detriment to the streetscape and pedestrian experience, which we should be prioritizing in a place like this if we ever want to reduce traffic and therefore carbon emissions. These are things that most people really do think is important, and protecting a hamburger joint and an empty gas station are completely antithetical to these goals. No matter how much the new apartments cost that inevitably get built on the CHAR-GRILL site, there will still be that many more hundreds of people living there than before, because right now that number is 0. That will free up more housing in the rest of the city, working incrementally to reduce the overall cost. Uninspiring glass box tower aside, this development will work to make our city more dense and more walkable, which means less traffic, a better pedestrian experience, and a more sustainable future. These are all things that can benefit everybody, not just the folks who can afford to live in the new building. Speaking of building housing where there wasn't any before, there was a similar protest by the residents of the wealthy suburban Hayes-Barton neighborhood when the site of a large mansion was rezoned for 17 new luxury townhomes. I use the term suburban here loosely, as this historic neighborhood is in close proximity to downtown, but has very suburban land use patterns that certainly wouldn't be allowed there today. The protest from neighbors fit classic NIMBY behavior, which I'll explain later, but I was especially disappointed with the news coverage and general discourse from non-residents about the rezoning. It was portrayed as if greedy developers came in and yoinked a beloved historic mansion just to turn a massive profit selling expensive townhomes in its place while also ruining the neighborhood's charm. The term luxury really does fit these townhomes, as they'll come in at about $2 million a piece, but nevertheless, this is overall a good thing. Wealthy people do still need to live somewhere, and when this project is done, 17 new families will live on the property compared to the one that lives there now. Here's another, less extreme example. This row of townhomes replaced a lot that formerly looked like this. So many people now get to live in this space, which is how it should be in such a dense area. This was only possible due to the City Council's zoning adjustments to allow for missing middle housing, which describes housing that lies somewhere in between single-family homes and larger residential buildings. Think triplexes, duplexes, and yes, even townhomes. I'm frustrated by the folks who want to prevent forward progress because, well, screw everyone else, they got theirs. The mayor said it very plainly as a response to the Hayes-Barton protest. We want to be able to provide more housing. Our city is changing. We are growing. Everybody needs to share this load, even if having a neighbor's mansion be redeveloped to ultra-luxury townhomes can be remotely considered sharing the load. One member of a local organization called Save Our Neighborhood said, "The worst part about it is you're not going to know if it's going to happen in your neighborhood." Another said, "You expect to have that preserved," referring to the mansion, "not to have your neighbor sold out to a bunch of townhomes or apartments or tiny homes or whatever." Usually when you hear of an organization like that, Save Our Neighborhoods, they're really just trying to save their neighborhood from forward, sustainable, equitable progress in housing development that is necessary for the growth of the city. These people are what many internet users describe as NIMBYs, where NIMBY stands for Not in My Backyard. This type of stuff happens all over the country, even in what many would consider particularly liberal or progressive areas, such as, say, Berkeley, California. Don't even get me started on the protests for new student housing there. Fun fact, the Raleigh City Council was significantly more NIMBY sympathetic until somewhat recently. It also wasn't until the past few years that things like missing middle housing, new mixed-use rezoning, and the removal of parking minimums were codified. Right now, I'm living short-term on Hillsborough Street in my girlfriend's apartment, and I can confidently say that I could live car-free here, and I'm not even downtown. I rarely drive, and walking and biking around here is so much more pleasant and safe than it was in years past. I can't afford to live in a lot of the new downtown developments myself, but the streetscape improvements imposed on the developers by the City Council have just created a lot of fantastic places to be. These are places that I go to out of desire, not just necessity, and they'll be staples of our downtown for decades to come. The best part is that these public places can be enjoyed by anyone and everyone. Isn't something like this a little bit better than this? Yet I'm certain that before these new buildings were constructed, there was a lot of protest about it, just as we see today. But now that they're here, I'm not sure too many people would rather have it back how it was. This is how we grow as a city, and we must do it together. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I appreciate you hearing me out. Let me know your opinion in the comments, and be sure to check out my Linktree for other social media platforms that I'm active on. I'll see you next time.